In this lesson, we will learn how to duplicate layers and how to offset our animation simply by changing the position of the snowflakes. Okay, so what I want to do now is duplicate some of the snowflakes that I have here on my timeline so that I really have just a little bit more filled out composition, and also just so that there's more snowflakes coming down after the snowflakes initially pass out of the composition viewer. So go ahead and select all of those snowflaked layers, and then we're going to use the Control-D shortcut to duplicate all of those layers. So with all of those selected, hold Control and hit D. And you notice that now these layers all look a little bit thicker, and if we look at our timeline, we see that each layer has been staggered and duplicated. So what I usually like to do whenever I do duplication like this with lots of layers involved, I like to grab that lowest layer there that's highlighted and drag that above the highest layer. So if I let go of that there, we see that now they've sort of been grouped. So all of the layers that are on my timeline from this first composition that we created are going to be coming down first. So the stacking order just gives you a little bit more of an idea of what you're going to be clicking on since they haven't been named individually. So I'm going to go ahead and start with this layer number 11 and then shift select the rest of those layers just so that I have all of those duplicated layers selected. And now I'm just going to move forwards, and right when I get to about there where I can still see the tops of these last three snowflakes, I'm going to grab the y-axis of just any one of these snowflakes and move them up. Now I want them still to look like they're part of this other composition, so I want them to be fairly close. So just right about there, I've moved that position. Now, something really interesting that we're going to notice here is that because we use the null object to change our position, we don't have to set any new keyframes. And all of those snowflakes that have been duplicated are simply going to continue to follow the null that they were originally parented to. So that's pretty interesting and very helpful. Now, again, these snowflakes don't quite make it out of view when we get to that keyframe. So I may want to duplicate them one more time. So now with these same snowflakes selected, I could duplicate them just right there, but I maybe want to have a little bit of a change this time. So I'm going to start at this layer 5 and then select through layer 15 and duplicate this set of snowflakes. So with all of those selected, we'll hit Control-D. And then do the same thing we did earlier, so we drag that to the top of the stacking order of all of our snowflakes. Okay, so now let's pull this back down just so we can see our layers a little bit better. And we'll scrub forward. And I'm just going to push these up here on that y-axis. So probably right about there is a good position for those. And because these have been rotated, I'm actually going to move these a little bit on the z-axis as well, just so they overlap a little bit differently than what we were getting before. So now we have a composition that looks something like this. Pretty interesting. And now it doesn't feel like those snowflakes are just ending when we get to that last keyframe. And you may already have noticed or realized that this happened whenever we were watching this animation back. But if I look at the keyframes that have been created for all of these duplicated snowflakes, they're the same keyframes that we had set on our original layer. So if you set the keyframes up on a layer and then you duplicate it, the keyframes will be duplicated as well. So whenever you're working on your own projects, if you know you're going to animate something, duplicate it after you set its keys, and then you won't have to worry about cutting and pasting any keys or reanimating keys on the new object. So in this lesson, we learned how with just a few simple tricks, we can make it look as if we had many more snowflakes and the animation still looks unique.